Okay, gradients. Okay, gradients, the paint bucket, unlike Illustrator, you have but one gradient tool. And the gradients in Photoshop can be used for backgrounds or things like that. But a lot of times they're used to accent photography. So if I was to make a new layer, say I make a new gradient layer, that's fine. What it does is it gives me a gradient over a picture that you can then manipulate. You can change the colors by clicking here. Okay. You can do the opacity. And we got your blues. You can do blue across the whole thing, but that's a solid gradient. They have a lot of preset gradients. Now, if I was to turn one of these transparent to say 26%, then that layer becomes visible, whatever. So you could tint a photo with this. Okay. Now, you can also simply make a new layer and create a gradient. Okay. You can do your basics. See, that added one for me. Let's see here if I want to mess with the gradient. I would go up here and play with my gradient here. Okay. There we go. I hit OK. And now you notice it didn't just automatically do a gradient. Now I have the option of positioning that gradient. I click, hold, and drag anywhere I want. Okay. I can make it a short gradient. I can make it a long gradient. However you want to deal with it. And then you can mess with the opacity of the entire layer, or you can go back into your gradient and say, well, I want it to be, I want this one to be, let's say 57%, and I want this one to be 21%. I'm going to hit OK, and then make a new one. Is it not letting me anymore? What's it doing here? It should be showing through. Huh. Well, that's odd, because I just made it transparent. Okay. Transparency, yeah. I know the, well, it says 100%. Let's try that. Well, I didn't do it. Let's try the whole layer. Okay. Not really sure why it didn't do that on that fill, but it didn't, which is odd. I'm going to have to come back and figure that one out. I'm going to delete that layer. Okay, now the paint bucket oftentimes is simply used like this to put a flat fill over the entire image. Some people use it like if they're drawing or painting to fill an area. So if I wanted to put red in her eyes, see how it went all the way down to her cheeks? Okay, things like this are happening. Oh, it still sees that erase mark. That would be because that erase mark is still there. Okay, so now if I were to The paint bucket has the same thing as the magic wand when it comes to this thing called tolerance. The lower the number, the more picky it is. So if I wanted to just get the white of her eyes now, I can. And then you can zoom in, and you'll notice it's basically filling in the pixels. It's not filling in the color, it's filling in the pixels that are close to it. So I click there. Whoop, broke out. And the more you click, the more it fills. You can see how it's getting more and more dense. With each click. Okay, I mean, this is literally down to the Lego. Let's see what we got now. Okay. So there's things like that that are obviously done better with a brush. Okay. And then the 3D material, this is if you do a 3D object. You have a blur tool if you want to blur edges of something. A lot of times when we cut out a picture, let me just do a real quick here with Denzel. Sorry, I stopped talking. I'm concentrating. And when I started talking, I missed his hair. I was doing so good. Alright, so I got my Denzel. I'm going to copy him. I'm going to cut him. And I'm going to paste him somewhere. I'll paste him here. Okay. When you do cutting, I said hold the shift key. What's the deal here? Oh, it's got a new thing. Nice. Okay, obviously it looks weird against this background, but if you cut something out and you want it to blend in with its new background, its new home, sometimes you just want to take a blur and go around the edges a little, just kind of like you're mowing the yard. Just a little bit, not a lot. And what that does is it softens, almost sands down that cutting edge where it's so clean and perfect. You're like, nothing looks like that in real life. And it just softens it and blends it a little bit easier into the background. You just kind of touch the edge with it. The sharpen tool ends up getting crazy after a while. I really don't care for that tool so much. So like if I clicked on his eyes and he kept clicking, see how it's okay, now he looks like the Terminator. That's no good. So sharpening I don't really use. Smudging, a lot of people enjoy smudging. However, what I want you to see is it mashes pixels. A little bit of smudging is okay. Let's just smudge the edge here around Jerry's little hole. So if I start to smudge the pixels to soften an edge. Up that a little bit. Oh, well, that would be why it's not working. I'm on the wrong layer. There we go. All right, so I'm smudging, which has a cool effect, but see what it did to the pixels and the grain of the original image? It's literally like milking watercolor or something like that. Now, if that's the look you want, that's totally fine, but just be careful if you're just trying to smudge a little bit, it's going to end up wrecking through. Okay? The stethoscope. See how it brought some of the wall down into Tom's arm, and then I'm going to smudge some of Tom's arm back up against it. Now it's twisted that. Okay? There's not a whole lot of control with the smudge tool. It does make some great fun stuff though. Look at that. Woo. Did you notice I went behind Denzel's head? Okay, so the smudge tool can make really great art backgrounds. And of course, the bigger the brush, the bigger the smudge, but you'll see how it's like in slow motion because it's smudging so many pixels simultaneously. It's about to poop its pants. A lot of people love this thing because it's just so cool looking. Okay, just a few more tools to go through. Burning, dodging, and sponging. Sponging is basically blurring, so I don't worry about that. But dodge and burn, these are darkroom terms. And what it is if you dodge something, you block how much exposure it is, and thus it gets dimmer. If you burn something, that increases its exposure, and it makes the contrast go higher. So dodging not only lightens an area, but also very much softens it. Burning will create richer blacks and stronger whites, but it goes for a real high contrast. So you have to be careful with that. So if I dodge, deselect this, if I dodge on this hammer, okay, you can see it's getting lighter. The background's getting lighter. Okay, now I'm going to burn or darken this area, which is what I did a while ago. And see how it's adding contrast and really darkening up that area. So that's dodging and burning. The pen tool, yes, just like in Illustrator. In Photoshop, you can make some vector shapes with the pen tool, but its primary purpose is for making very concise, detailed selections of parts of an object, parts of an image that you want to harvest. So people with curly hair, going around, tracing around an automobile in a showroom so you can then take that picture and put it on a mountainside in Colorado, you know. Things like that. The pen tool, you would trace the object in the photo just like you would any object in Illustrator, and then you would convert that path or that Illustrator line into a dotted selection. You have your type text tool, okay, about the same as Illustrator. It doesn't have the type on a path or type on a or type in an area option. Okay, next is the black arrow and white arrow, the path selectors, just like in Illustrator. They behave just like the arrows in Illustrator. If you create something with the pen tool, you will need to manipulate it with these two and not this one. Shape builder, just like in Illustrator. The hand tool is literally, if you use the hand tool and you're zoomed in, and slide your paper. And then of course the zoom tool. You can literally zoom in. These are pixels. 1, 2, 3 pixels. And then you just click and push this way to zoom out. So it's a lot of push and pull. Okay. Then you have your, there is no fill and stroke. There is only foreground color and background color. Now, the background on this doesn't exist, so you get a checkerboard. If there is no background, you get to see the checkerboard. That means it's a floating layer. If you erase or cut something and it's white behind it, then you do have a background, or whatever color you choose to make the background. And then this is just a preview mode, and this has to do with masking. We'll get to that later. And that is the toolbar. Wow, that took almost an hour.